Chapter 11. School Bully. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Qin Ran was silent for a few seconds before she changed her sitting posture. Impossible. Gu Shiqi hid the medicine box and bit his cigarette. He seemed to chuckle a little, his voice gentle and sweet. You're pretty confident. The bathroom door banged and someone came in. Qin Ran gave a faint "yeah," then lowered her voice. What the hell did you see? But Gu Shiqi would not lie to her. Your name was on the list. They're investigating you. Gu Shiqi smiled at the little boy who handed him a candy. Then, he squinted his eyes and walked in the other direction. Did you leak your own information accidentally when you helped me check for stuff last time? That's even more impossible. No one can find it. Qin Ran stood up, her eyebrows raised slightly, and she casually tucked her fringe behind her ear. I'm hanging up if you have nothing else to say. Several girls were whispering outside. Qin Ran opened the door of the compartment and went out. The girls were not here for the toilet and they just stood beside the sink. Qin Ran saw Qin Yu in the middle immediately. Qin Yu pursed her lips and acted as if she didn't know Qin Ran. She stood among the girls without even raising her head. The whispering voice disappeared instantly because someone suddenly came out of the compartment. The whole building was suddenly quiet. Qin Ran pushed her phone back into her pocket and walked 2 steps forward. The hair on the side of her head slipped. I want to wash my hands, thank you. The group of girls backed away. They couldn't help but look at her. When Qin Ran washed her hands and left, the girls reacted. Qin Yu pursed her lips. The girls looked at each other. Qin Ran's face was too recognizable and a baby-faced girl recognized her quickly. She is Qin Ran. She looks. Another girl saw Qin Yu's expression and immediately poked her waist. The baby-faced girl almost bit her tongue and immediately changed her tune. She looks average. The boys are acting like they haven't seen a girl before. Qin Yu, don't care about what they're saying on the forum. She fights and skips classes, and even messes around with the other high school students. She's obviously not a decent girl. The first lesson in the afternoon was Gao Yang's math class. Before class, Xiao Xing took out his mobile phone and found the post on the forum. He kicked the chair in front of him and handed his mobile phone to Su Yaoguang. Young Master Su, the campus bell is changed. It's Qin Yu's sister, look at it. Su Yaoguang was doing a math problem and he didn't even glance at him. It's time for the lesson to start. Damn you. Xiao Xing took back his phone and saved the photo by himself. The teenager sitting beside him laughed. Young Master Su only has Qin Yu in his heart. Xiao Xing, you can forget about it. Xiao Xing held a pen in one hand and his cell phone in his other hand. He looked at a campus forum of First Middle School and, after a while, he suddenly said, did she really fight with the group of high school students? How did you know? Several boys around him were very concerned about Qin Ran's affairs, and they immediately turned over. Xiao Xing pointed at a post above and frowned. She has provoked Wei Zihang's group. After school, they want to go find her. At the mention of Wei Zihang, everyone in the back row all snorted. They glanced at Su Yaoguang and were afraid to speak. Previously, only Lin Jinxian could match up with Wei Zihang, but he had already graduated 2 years ago. There was only Su Yaoguang now. However, young Master Su was cold and spoke little even to Qin Yu. It seemed like he had a bad impression of the new campus belle and probably wouldn't help her out. Thus, she would only have a hard time in school from now on. Qin Ran supported her chin and sat down with her back leaning against the wall. She closed her eyes and lowered her head halfway so that her fringe fell over and crossed her brow bone. At the end of the afternoon class, Lin Siren handed over her notes to Qin Ran and whispered, do you want to look at it? Qin Ran sat up and took it slowly. She kept the paper and smiled lightly at her deskmate. Thanks. Do you know where I can buy books? No problem. Lin Siren blushed. Sure enough, even though her new deskmate looked fierce, she was still easy-going. I'll take you there. One Qin Ran wanted to buy extra-curricular books, so Lin Siren took her out of school. She tutored her about the school on the way. There's someone you must not mess with in our school. Lin Siren had been from junior middle school, so she knew everything about first middle school. Class 3.1's Qin Yu. Before you, she was our campus belle. Qin Ran had one hand in her pocket and her other hand held her phone. She raised her eyebrows when she heard this. Qin Yu is from the Lin family. She is very powerful and is in the top 5 of our school. Not only is she pretty, but she can also even play the violin. Every afternoon when she has lessons, many people will go over to watch her. Most importantly, young Master Su is protecting her. Li Siyu lowered her voice. Some girls who didn't like Qin Yu have been taken care of by young Master Su last time. The two talked as they walked outside the school. The third year of high school was released late, and many people had hurried home from school for dinner. Hence, the road was very clean. Not far away. Qin Yu, I heard your brother is back. Xiao Xing held a cigarette and lit it while smiling. He used to call her campus belle Qin. Qin Yu's expression remained the same. Yeah. Su Yaoguang stood by her side, and although he wasn't warm nor cold, his attitude was much gentler. Xiao Xing laughed. I want to have half of your brother. So my dad won't deduct my pocket money. He took a puff, and before he even looked up, he heard the roar of a locomotive in his ear. It was very loud. Xiao Xing rubbed his ears and stepped aside while cursing. The locomotive stopped not far ahead, and it was clear that they were surrounding two girls. At the front was a fiery red locomotive. Too obstructed by the locomotive, one of the girls' thin, arrogant figure looked extremely familiar. Qin Yu took a step back and lowered her eyes. Wei Zihong is in front. Shall we go a different way? Su Yaoguang frowned. There were two girls in front of him, facing away from him. He couldn't see their faces, but one of their thin backs looked pretty arrogant. Before he spoke, Xiao Xing said, Qin Yu, go back first. If there's a fight here, it won't be good if you get injured. Xiao Xing had specifically detoured here. One Qin Yu glanced at Su Yaoguang. He wasn't bothered by the chaos in front of him, and his eyebrows were relaxed and calm as usual, so she was relieved. My driver is over there, I'll go back first. She paused and said, go back soon too. Qin Yu got into the car, but the driver didn't drive immediately. He said hesitantly, Miss, in front, that's. It's okay. I'm hungry, let's go back soon. Qin Yu tilted her head and smiled. The driver immediately started the engine and drove away. Over there, Lin Siren's face turned pale as she looked at the locomotive surrounding them. She clutched Qin Ran's hand. 4-inch that's. She looked at the teenager sitting on the red locomotive with his eyes narrowed as if he were looking at his prey. Her voice was tight and her palms were sweaty. It's the high school bully. One Lin Siren fidgeted nervously when suddenly, a low hoarse voice laughed behind her. Chapter 12. My ancestor, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios' Lin Siren looked up slightly and saw that her fierce deskmate's eyes were squinted slightly, and she was even whistling. Her voice was casual, and she even had one hand in her pocket. She turned to the side and looked at the locomotive teenagers around her plainly. Why was this girl still laughing? There were too many legends about the school bully. The thought of it turned Lin Siren's legs into jelly. She clutched Qin Ran's wrist, her knuckles raised and her fingertips white. Not far away. Young Master Su, Wei Zihang and the others who bullied our classmates are right in front of you. Qiao Sheng was also anxious. He bit his cigarette, touched his hair, and raised his eyebrows at Su Yaoguang. Su Yaoguang raised his eyebrows. His appearance was mild, but his eyes were cold. What does it have to do with you? His gaze fell on the tightly enclosed crowd in front of him. In the middle, the girl with her back to him stood there lazily. She was rather tall and skinny and didn't look over. In the setting sun, her face was bright and demonic, her expression cold and arrogant, and she looked clearly like a bandit. Her unshakable fierceness made people shiver. Su Yaoguang paused. It was no wonder Qiao Sheng had dragged him here too. This scene was indeed rare. Young Master Su, why did you stop? Su Yaoguang didn't answer, so Qiao Sheng grew anxious. His hair was short and stiff and showed off his obstinance. Wei Zihang, that dude has gotten out of his car. Okay, forget about it if you don't like our new classmate. But you've known that girl in the student committee for 2 years, can you really leave her to die? Su Yaoguang seemed a little silent, so Qiao Sheng didn't think much about it and just thought that he had agreed. He took a step forward and said loudly, "Student committee member, bring the new classmate over here and make way for Wei Zihang." Qiao Sheng's voice was quite anxious. As Lin Siren heard Qiao Sheng's voice, she lowered her eyes and pursed her lips tightly, her body tense, and her large school uniform making her seem extremely small and delicate. Holding Qin Ran's hand tightly, she raised her foot and walked in Qiao Sheng's direction. Wei Zihang was famous for his fierceness. When he just transferred to the school back then, he became the leader of the local blacks. They had thought he was finished, but in the end, they were wrong. His reputation as the school bully spread widely. His legends in first middle school were all about his evil deeds. He had a large background, and even the underworld didn't dare to mess with him. How could these ordinary students possibly afford to mess with him? Even Lin Siren, a good student, had heard of this fierce name. After hearing Qiao Sheng's words, she quickly pulled Qin Ran and wanted to drag her away. However, Qin Ran's feet stayed rooted to the ground. She couldn't be dragged away. Holding his cigarette, Qiao Sheng grew anxious at the situation and ran a hand through his hair. Damn it! What's wrong with this new campus belle, does she want to fight? Wei Zihang isn't so easy to mess with. Young Master Su, say something. This new campus belle really had an arrogant temper and was extremely wild. She was really a newborn calm who wasn't afraid of tigers. Wei Zihang and his followers all had a bad reputation in Yunqing University, and the students there were all afraid of him. He had always been lawless and no one could restrain him. After Lin Jinxian graduated, he only feared Su Yaoguang a little. The two gangs were extremely disagreeable, and their main interaction was the welcome meeting for the new first middle school students. Qin Yu was quite famous. One day, Wei Zihang and his party barged in and mocked that Qin Yu's violin was not good. Su Yaoguang immediately went against Wei Zihang. At that time, Qin Yu's violin was in the 8th grade. Everyone thought he had deliberately picked a fight. And Su Yaoguang was a freshman at that time. He had just transferred over, and Wei Zihang did not provoke him in the end. Since that incident, Qiao Sheng knew that Wei Zihang feared Su Yaoguang. Now that Qin Ran was being so stubborn, Qiao Sheng couldn't help but want to slip away in her place and cursed her under his breath. Did she want to die? Lin Siren watched as the school bully got out of his car, her face turning even paler. She said in a trembling voice, "Qin Ran, we have to go quickly. I'll explain it to you later." She was still pulling on Qin Ran, her palms sweaty and trembling horribly. This reaction was extremely normal for when an ordinary student saw the school bully that even the underworld didn't dare touch. Qin Ran patted Lin Siren's shoulder. Her expression remained unchanged and she stuck her hand in her pocket loosely, squinting at them. She still acted like a big boss, wild and crazy. But Lin Siren was not comforted. Her legs were soft and she couldn't move. She was almost falling into a coma. The teenager in front walked towards them. He had a pair of phoenix eyes, a distinct silhouette, and a mysterious aura. White smoke burned between his fingers and his whole being could only be described as evil. Seeing that Wei Zihang was walking over himself, Xiaoxing finally moved. The group of people not far away also thought that this new student was finished. Su Yaoguang looked at Wei Zihang. His clear and dark eyes changed slightly and he was about to say something. But then, he heard Qin Ran say, "Wei Zihang, get someone to send my desk mate back. She can't walk." The scene fell silent. Wei Zihang glanced at Lin Siren and immediately laughed. It was an easygoing laugh that didn't sound like a school bully at all. He immediately turned and picked a teenager who looked like a good student to send Lin Siren over. Then, he came over again and looked at Qin Ran. He smiled, the surprise at the bottom of his eyes serious. "Come on, Sister Ran, how could you not tell me that you're in Yuncheng?" Qin Ran tugged at her school uniform. It was decided last minute. The letter from President Su was already from a year ago. Wei Zihang was still dissatisfied. He was handsome and had defined features. "Then, why didn't you come to find me? I only arrived yesterday." Qin Ran motioned to Lin Siren, but when she saw that Lin Siren was still stunned and didn't respond, she turned to her side and kicked Wei Zihang. She raised her eyebrows and said, "Tell your little brothers to get lost quickly, they're scaring my desk mate." Wei Zihang let his younger brothers walk away quickly. Lin Siren was obviously not in a good state, so Qin Ran was ready to buy books by herself. The boy beaten by Qin Ran at noon didn't walk away. His colorful hair drooped and he was almost about to kneel. "Boss, she's..." Wearing a jacket, Wei Zihang crushed his cigarette rather gracefully. He glanced over coldly, and the corners of his lips curled up in an evil way when he heard the question. "My ancestor." 7 After speaking, he didn't even wait for them to respond. "Sister Ran, where are you going?" "I'm buying a book," she replied concisely. "I'll go with you." As his voice drifted away, Lin Siren, who was still rooted to the same spot, still did not respond. The little brother of the school bully, who she had been so terribly afraid of, said carefully to her, "Sister, are you going back to school? Or are you going to eat?" Lin Siren's head was a bit empty. She felt like she was dreaming. Not far away, Xiaoxing's side was also silent. Even Su Yaoguang could not react for a while. Qin Ran was much calmer. She just got a few books and her phone vibrated a few times. She took it out casually. It was an undisclosed number. "There is a new mission specifically asking for you. Do you want it?" Chapter 13. I am not a good person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Qin Ran looked at this message for a long while, then she threw her books for Wei Zihang to hold before texting back, "Is the person placing the order sick?" Her price was 10 times higher than the market price. Without waiting for the other side to reply, she relied on her quick speed and quickly texted 4 more words, "I'm not taking it." Wei Zihang took her books and paid for them. He flipped through the books selected by Qin Ran and realized that they weren't study materials but original copies of foreign books. They were books that were of no interest to anyone. He knew that Qin Ran liked to read books. Chen Shulan's entire study was full of her books and she especially liked reading the original text. Wei Zihang had seen the original 100 Years of Solitude and Kite Chaser on her bedside. 11 He put the books on the cash register. His shredded hair drooped slightly, and only his dark eyes were sharp. Wei Zihang paid and Qin Ran didn't fight over it with him. After returning her message, she put her phone back in her pocket and walked outside first. Wei Zihang took the bag and walked towards her. He held the cigarette that was almost gone and was about to throw it in a trash can. We'll have dinner first. Wei Zihang waved his hand in front of her and tilted his head with a smile. Qin Ran shook her head. She had to go back to the dormitory and study by herself. Give me one stick. She glanced at him. Wei Zihang knew what she was saying. He flinched back and sulked. No, Grandma Chen will kill me. Qin Ran kicked him and stared at him with her good-looking bandit eyes. Reluctantly, Wei Zihang took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, took one out and handed it to Qin Ran. Then, he passed the lighter over. His lighter was the friction type. Qin Ran's fingers were thin and long. They looked like jade and glowed a healthy pink. With a slight click sound, blue flames burst out. The faint smoke rose, and the smell of mint it emitted wasn't obvious. Qin Ran wore a jeans white shirt with a junior high school uniform hung loosely around it. She appeared obedient but still had to do some disobedient things. Her soft and fluffy hair draped over her shoulders. The wind blew past and gently ruffled her hair. She lowered her eyes and leaned casually against the wall. Smoke rose from her fingertips and she appeared lazy and casual. There was also a sort of calmness that hadn't been in her these few days. Her smoking position was extremely handsome. One Wei Zihang squatted at the intersection to help her keep a lookout. He couldn't help but glance back, frowning. Qin Ran's smoke was given by him. A few years ago, Qin Ran had knocked on his door, drenched in blood. He didn't know just what she had experienced. He didn't ask her much about her affairs. He didn't know how to comfort other people. He had learned how to smoke when he was a kid, and smoking was a psychological need for them. That night, he had smoked cigarettes with Qin Ran for the whole night before she was fine. It was just that Qin Ran was different from him. She didn't smoke much, but when she was extremely vexed, she would hide in his house and smoke. When she got found out, he had been beaten by his grandmother. She just had to look at the two old grandparents with her innocent eyes and they believed that he had tricked her into smoking. 3-inch smoking is not good. Wei Zihang surveyed the street depressedly. He retracted when he saw that no one was on the street and tried to persuade her bitterly. Now he wished he could go back to a few years ago and strangle himself before he could give her a cigarette. After smoking half of it, Qin Ran snuffed it and threw it into the trash can. She took 2 steps back and straightened her hair. When she heard Wei Zihang's voice, she glanced at him lazily and chuckled lowly. Get lost. I've reflected on myself many times. How could I have taken you on this crooked road? Wei Zihang pulled his collar. What's wrong with that? Qin Ran told Wei Zihang to pass the books to her. Her voice was faint, but her eyebrows gathered and she had a cynical smile. I was never a good person. You are a good person. Wei Zihang was extremely serious. Qin Ran walked forward with the bag and waved in Wei Zihang's direction. That's because you don't understand me. She returned to her dormitory. There was no one inside, so she had a short time for late self-study. The seniors basically all returned to class after their meals. Qin Ran placed the book on her desk. She opened an iron box on her bed, took a white sleeping pill from it, and swallowed it. After taking the medicine, she didn't go to her class immediately. Instead, she took out her black backpack, unzipped it, and took out the very heavy black cell phone. The phone screen was still black. She pressed the screen and turned on the power button. In less than a second, the phone lit up, but it was not the main page. A map page with a red dot on it appeared, which landed in the school medical office. At the same time, in the Lin family house. Lin Jinxian didn't go out today. The family sat at the table to eat. Lin Qi asked about Qin Ran, and when he heard that she was staying in school, Lin Qi was surprised. But he didn't say anything and instead asked about Principal Su. Do you know President Su? Ning Qing didn't know of President Su, but Lin Jinxian, who had returned from the imperial capital, had news. Ning Qing placed a spoonful of vegetables on Qin Yu's plate. I heard from my mother that President Su went to Ninghai village to help the poor 3 years ago. Everyone at the dining table spoke about Qin Ran for several minutes. Qin Yu's spoon clanged against the bowl. Several people looked at her, and Lin Qi was concerned. What are you thinking about? Envied it. After school at night, I thought I saw my elder sister. Qin Yu hesitated. She was with people from Z High School. Z High School. Ning Qing's voice rose slightly and her knuckles turned white. Isn't she in first middle school? Qin Yu's eyes were downcast and she squeezed the spoon in her hand. I heard that she was fighting with them at noon, and those people came over at night. I'm a little worried about her. No need to worry. Ning Qing said coldly. Her eyes seemed to hide a sword as she looked at Qin Yu. Then, she suppressed her anger and lowered her voice. Study well and don't care about your sister even if she comes to find you. She was furious. Ning Qing couldn't possibly finish her meal now. Lin Qi was still eating without asking much. Qin Ran was only his stepdaughter, and he had already been benevolent enough to be able to help her arrange for her accommodation and school. 6. If the other party was like Qin Yu, he may be a little more worried, but there was nothing about Qin Ran that deserved his attention. He was too busy with his business, so how could he have the time? Tidy up the 3rd floor and make a study for Yuer. Lin Jinxian didn't care about their discussions. He was genuinely curious about Qin Ran, but it was no match for his affection towards Qin Yu. A genius like Lin Jinxian whose life went smoothly rarely put anyone to heart. Ning Qing's expression also eased. She wouldn't be giving birth to more children, so the Lin family would still be Lin Jinxuan's. It was important to her to obtain Lin Jinxuan's regard. Lin Jinxian was indifferent to her, but he was fond of Qin Yu. She could only rely on Qin Yu for her position in the Lin family. It would be easy as long as they were in a good relationship. Qin Yu smiled sweetly. Thank you, brother. I'll answer a phone call. Lin Jinxian nodded slightly. He pulled his chair and got up, then walked upstairs with his mobile phone. There was a very mild and apologetic middle-aged tone on the other end of the phone. Mr. Lin, we can't take your order. I have already returned your deposit to your card. Lin Jinxian was startled, but his startled voice was still polite. May I know why? Chapter 14. Because I am really famous. You are listening at novelfull.audio. ENV Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, sorry, it's for personal reasons, so I don't know either. The voice over the phone was still very polite. Lin Jinxian hung up regretfully. He looked down and his eyelashes were downcast, hiding his expression. He wasn't in the mood to continue his dinner downstairs anymore, so he sat in a chair in the study and looked at his phone, slightly annoyed. But within 5 minutes, a message arrived saying that a refund had been made. Are you in trouble? Not long after, Lin Qi pushed open the door and asked casually. Lin Jinxian had always been a genius. When he was a freshman, he started a company with others. Though Lin Qi wasn't clear about the specific content, he knew that Lin Jinxian had his own opinions. He rarely saw him so anxious that he wouldn't even eat. Lin Jinxian nodded with a frown. He took out a cigarette but didn't light it, and just played with it in his hands. His gentle face was terribly dull and irritableness showed between his eyebrows. Just a little. After a short while, he sighed. He didn't say more. After finally contacting those people, he had even spent a lot of money, only to get rejected in the end. 1** at first middle school. Qin Ran didn't go for self-study. She looked up at the door of the school's medical office, where the light was still turned on. The school doctors worked at night from 6 to 9 o'clock. When she reached, Lu Xiaoying was dealing with a little girl. No matter what, after coping with little girls for a whole day, Lu Xiaoying was already a little impatient, but he still politely responded. After finally getting the girl with ulterior motives to leave, he looked up and saw the big boss who had fought in the noon standing just a few meters away from him. Qin Ran was born pretty. Her legs were straight and slender, her eyelashes long and dense, drooping slightly. "Classmate, what's wrong?" Lu Xiaoying suddenly felt refreshed. He put his hands on the table and asked with a smile. Qin Ran narrowed her eyes slightly and glanced at the not too large office before saying casually, "Are you recruiting a part-timer?" Lu Xiaoying froze. He looked at Qin Ran. Qin Ran thought for a while and whispered, "Sorry for disturbing you. I'm short of money." Yes, she was short of money now. Lu Xiaoying's eyes fell on Qin Ran. She was loosely dressed in a school uniform jacket. Inside was a white shirt. The white shirt was probably a few years old and even had furring on it. Compared with the little girl who just came in and took off her school uniform to reveal her beautiful new dress, young Master Lu, who never had tender, protective feelings for the other sex, suddenly felt a difference. Lu Xiaoying turned his head and glanced at Cheng Wan. Today, all the female students who had come to the school's medical office had come for him. But he didn't even show his face. Lu Xiaoying himself wanted to keep her. The school medical office was short of staff, but tomorrow, Cheng Wan's butler would arrive at Yuncheng. "Sorry." Before Lu Xiaoying could finish his sentence, an amused voice sounded from inside. "Can you cook?" The master of the voice looked up, his beautiful peach blossom eyes half squinting. Qin Ran looked at him, her slightly red eyes hazy and mesmerizing. She nodded. "Yes. Noon and evening. We pay by the day. Can you start tomorrow?" "Yes." After Qin Ran left, Lu Xiaoying reached out and rubbed his chin. He had always been incapable of hiding his thoughts, and his heart of gossip had been ignited, but he didn't dare provoke Cheng Wan, so he said euphemistically, "Have you forgotten that your butler is coming tomorrow? Let him stay in the villa." Cheng Wan lazily leaned on the back of the sofa, holding his cigarette. Because he had just woken up, his voice was still deliberately lowered. Lu Xiaoying wanted to continue asking, but the phone rang. It was the captain of the Interpol brigade in Beijing. He covered his mobile phone's microphone and looked up at Cheng Wan. "It's Captain Hao, there's." Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Cheng Wan. "Let him go find a professor at the Imperial University." Cheng Wan couldn't find his lighter and just put down his cigarette. Lu Xiaoying was silent. When mingling with Cheng Wan, he always felt as if his IQ was too low. One later, Butler Cheng had told him Cheng Wan's Wechsler intelligence test results. Lu Xiaoying was unperturbed from then on. He couldn't understand the genius thoughts and communication methods. Lu Xiaoying tidied the documents on his table and suddenly thought of something. "Master Wan, do you think Elder Su really found a successor?" "No way, he doesn't even think highly of his son and grandson. The capital was full of talents, but Elder Su had spent half his life finding a successor only to fail. Yuncheng was a small city and was generally ordinary from any angle. Could he have found one here?" Cheng Wan squinted and smiled. "He doesn't need to make such a joke." Qin Ran returned to class 3.9. In the evening self-study, the chemistry teacher issued papers with the English and physics teacher. Self-study time was from 6 to 10 o'clock. The 3 papers were done, and it was almost 10 o'clock. Even after class, nobody moved. Lin Siren had wanted to say something to Qin Ran. But this was the time to do the papers and she was a good student, so she didn't dare speak to her and didn't find an opportunity. Qin Ran put the paper aside and picked up a book she had just bought at night. She looked through it slowly, and when Lin Siren glanced over occasionally, she could see that she was writing with her pen. After waiting for self-study to end and after the representatives of each subject had collected the papers, Lin Siren finally found an opportunity. Lin Siren put the papers aside and looked at Qin Ran and stuttered. You. How come? Qin Ran still held the book in her hand, with her back against the wall. She smirked, and the fluorescent light hit her face, showing a sort of mischievousness in her delicate face. What? Just now, why did that school bully? Lin Siren's head was muddy. She probably wanted to ask why Wei Ziheng seemed to listen to her. Qin Ran closed her book, raised his eyebrows, and said very seriously, because I used to be really famous. Lin Siren shuddered and didn't respond. The back row. Su Yaoguang put down his pen, and there was still a question in the physics paper he didn't answer. You can't do this question either. Xiao Xing turned his head. His papers were mostly unanswered, whereas Su Yaoguang only had one question unanswered. Yes, I'll ask Qin Yu next time. Su Yaoguang looked cold. I'll collect the papers first. He was the representative of the physics class. Su Yaoguang held the paper in his hand and slowly collected from the row of Qin Ran and Lin Siren. The 3 papers on Qin Ran's desk were all empty, and only her name was written. Her handwriting wasn't really good. Looking. Su Yaoguang looked down and remembered Qin Yu's beautiful calligraphy. Ah, Qin Ran, the physics teacher is a big devil. His papers must be done. Just copy mine. Lin Siren immediately pushed her papers to Qin Ran. Su Yaoguang's eyes were down and his head was lowered. He was cold and annoyed, so he said something that teachers usually say, you might as well not do it if you're going to copy. Chapter 15. Love Letters, Influential Figure. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Qin Ran picked up her pen and copied Li Siren's paper. She changed a few numbers occasionally. She was quite familiar with it, and it was obvious she was used to copying homework. Her writing wasn't very smooth, and she was writing fast, so her handwriting was even uglier. First middle school was full of nerds, and each student was very disciplined. Except for some rare cases, there was basically no such thing as copying homework. She was sitting in an unruly posture, squinting with her hand still on her chin, and the classroom was quite hot. She took off her school uniform jacket and wore only a shirt. Qin Ran ignored Su Yaoguang and passed the paper after calmly copying it. Su Yaoguang didn't say much, he just took out the paper in Qin Ran's hands and left. He didn't even look at Qin Ran again. He had already tried to talk sense into her, but since she was still stubborn about it, he had nothing else to say. 5 She had to repeat 1 year and still didn't know what was good for her. What a waste of the Lin family's goodwill. For Su Yaoguang collected from the next row, his eyes frosty as usual. After Xiao Xing finished his last English paper, he sat on the seat and waited for Su Yaoguang. When Su Yaoguang came back, there was a kind of indifferent light in his eyes. He froze but didn't speak, and just looked at Qin Ran. Before leaving, he even waved to Qin Ran. If it wasn't for the rush of time tonight and Qin Ran coming late, Xiao Sheng would definitely have gone up to say a few words to the new student. This new student, with long legs and a thin waist, white skin and exceptional beauty. Qin Yu couldn't compare with her. Her eyebrows were terribly delicate, but the bottom of her eyes was slightly red as if she couldn't be provoked. The most important thing that Xiao Sheng wanted to talk to Qin Ran about was how she had subdued Z High School's bully. Su Yaoguang sent the paper to the office and went downstairs with Qin Yu. Qin Yu was the representative for chemistry. Su Yaoguang asked Qin Yu about the chemistry paper's last question. His other subjects were all very good and were far better than everyone else's, but his chemistry was a little lacking. Qin Yu had participated in the provincial competition in the second year of high school for chemistry, so the two often discussed together. Su Yaoguang admired her. I also thought about this formula. I'll go back and try again. The cold look on Su Yaoguang's face was a little lighter, and his eyes were also gentler. Qin Yu nodded, and inadvertently asked about the evening again. My sister, is she all right? Su Yaoguang thought of the paper that the other party just copied. He frowned and shook his head, not saying any more. Seeing Su Yaoguang's attitude, Qin Yu smiled but did not speak. Qin Ran and Lin Siren were in the dormitory with another girl. The other girl was the representative of the English class. She had short hair, a fresh look, and a pair of snobbish eyes. Qin Ran had just transferred here, and the school already had rumors about her fighting. The English representative had also witnessed her copying Lin Siren's English answer. Furthermore, the students at First Middle School either had their parents accompanying them to school or had their drivers pick them up. Those who stayed in the hostel were mostly not well-to-do. The clothes Qin Ran wore were very average, and they looked like they had been worn for several years. The English class representative fiddled with several bottles of high-end skincare products on her desk, the bottles colliding with each other loudly. Qin Ran put on her pajamas after taking a bath. The pajamas had a large neckline, and she didn't even care about her appearance. She loosely exposed her large white shoulder which was faintly visible, and there was a fiery red color on her shoulder. It looked like a tattoo. She was already white, so the red tattoo seemed even redder and more obvious. The English class representative gave her one more look. Qin Ran didn't care. She climbed back on her bed, lowered the curtain and opened the iron box filled with sleeping pills on the bedside. She poured out a pill, thought about it, and poured another pill out. This time, she swallowed without water. She didn't sleep immediately. Instead, she turned on the dark-colored lamp and took out an original text to read it slowly. When Lin Siren woke up, she found that the light on Qin Ran's bed was still slightly on. In the early morning on the next day, Qin Ran and Lin Siren went to their classroom while it was still quite early. The entire campus was almost foggy. Qin Ran sat sideways on a stool, her legs crossed casually. She lazily went to take her extracurricular books from under the table. Several light blue envelopes fell to the floor. There was also a light pink heart on the envelope. Qin Ran picked it up and put it back again. Lin Siren glared at her. Qin Ran, this is a love letter, there's several of them. A few of the students around looked at this. Many people in the class had received love letters, especially Qiao Sheng and Su Yaoguang, but it was really rare to receive so many letters on just the second day of school. Qin Ran gave a faint hum before opening her extra-curricular book. She leaned against the wall with her long eyelashes drooping down and started flipping through the book absent-mindedly. This original book was so new that it looked like it had never been read before. Lin Siren glanced at it and saw that it was in a foreign language she had never seen before. Taking out her own textbook, Lin Siren turned slightly. Are you not excited about receiving so many love letters? Qin Ran turned another page, and with her movements, the wide sleeves of the school uniform slipped down. It's not like I've never received them before. Free Lin Siren. They had lunch. The English class representative went to a class downstairs to wait for Qin Yu. Qin Yu was a top student and also had a good family. She was picked up and dropped off by a luxury car every day, and even had a good relationship with Lin Jinxian, the talented young man on the honor list. Furthermore, Su Yaoguang was also covering for her. She was the main topic of every boys' and girls' discussions. At first glance, it was obvious she wasn't an ordinary person. Besides the English class representative, most girls in the school wanted to be close to Qin Yu. She's still pretending to read the original text. The English class representative was talking about how Qin Ran had removed Qin Yu's status as the campus belle and was very dissatisfied. Do you know, she copied all 3 papers last night. She doesn't even understand English, how could she still pretend to read the original text? Our campus king Sue was so angry with her. I really don't know what's wrong with the boys in our school. Besides her face, what else does she have? Qin Yu had long known that Qin Ran wasn't good at studying. She pursed her lips and ate 2 more bites. Today Cheng Wan's kitchen wasn't ready. Qin Ran only came by in the evening. Qin Ran was going to cook lunch and dinner for Cheng Wan. There was a fine kitchen in the corner of the school doctor's office. All the ingredients were in it, but there were no vegetables. Cheng Wan was wearing a black shirt with a keychain in his hand. His brows were clearly defined and handsome, and the group of girls dangling in front of the school medical office was giving him a headache. He opened the car door, his figure slender and thin. There is a patient with Lu Xiaoying. I'll bring you to the ingredients first. Cheng Wan drove to a private hotel not far from First Middle School. Qin Ran glanced at it, knowing roughly that this place operated on a private membership card system. Cheng Wan parked his car and lazily put his hands on the steering wheel before answering the phone. Qin Ran opened the door and got out of the car. Ning Qin just parked her car. Today, her sister-in-law from the Lin family came, and Lin Qi had reserved a meal in this private hall half a month in advance. She had come over after doing her spa. The driver parked the car and she got out of the car. As soon as she saw the girl who was wearing a plaid coat, her face froze. The Lin family wasn't the top big family in Yuncheng, but it was also famous, and everyone in the Lin family shouldn't be underestimated. Ning Qin didn't want to let the relatives of the Lin family see her relatives who were poor and lacked etiquette. She didn't want the Lin family to mock her. Especially her own daughter, who only fought and even had to repeat a year. It was already extremely difficult to talk about her to ordinary families, let alone in front of the Lin family. That was why Qin Ran was allowed to leave the Lin family residence to live in the school's hostel. Why are you here? She glanced left and right and, after checking that her sister-in-law wasn't around, quickly walked towards Qin Ran. Her expression was not good. Chapter 16. Elder Sue's Thoughts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Since she was afraid of being seen by her sister-in-law, Ning Qin kept her head low like a thief and kept paying attention to the movement in the parking lot. Qin Ran was looking down at her phone when she heard the voice. She raised her head slightly, her expression remaining indifferent. Her eyes were dark and not as bright, and the whites were slightly reddish and wild. She said impatiently, I have matters to attend to. She stuck one hand in her pocket and narrowed her eyes slightly. Ning Qin pursed her lips and remembered what Qin Yu had said last time. She lowered her voice and said with a cold face, Did you fight again yesterday? In the car, Cheng Wan answered his phone. Looking up, he saw the girl standing arrogantly beside a woman who was talking to her. The woman's expression wasn't very friendly, and she was glancing around furtively like a thief. Both of them had their sides facing him, which looked slightly familiar. He had originally wanted to wait for the hotel to bring in the ingredients. But after seeing this situation, Cheng Wan thought for a while and opened the car door. He got out of the car, the noble outer corner of his eye drooped coldly, his peach blossom eyes hazy and sinister. The man in the hotel ran over sweating with the ingredients. Seeing that he was waiting outside, he quickened his pace and carefully and respectfully handed over a beautifully arranged basket. Master Wan, why are you here in person? Well, Cheng Wan lifted his chin, his eyes still on Qin Ran. His voice was very low and slightly sloppy. Put it in. The expression on Ning Qin's face was not very good. Qin Ran, let's go. He raised his voice slightly, just to let Qin Ran and Ning Qin hear. The fingers hanging against the door dangled slightly, and his black shirt glowed coldly in the sun, contrasting with his white exposed wrist. Ning Qin froze for a while. Such an outstanding appearance was probably rarely seen in Yuncheng. Before she could respond, Qin Ran had already walked over with her cell phone. The two got into the car, the black car door closed, and started slowly. Ning Qin took a closer look and realized that it was a very ordinary black car with a Volkswagen brand. But the car's body didn't look like it. It was probably a new Volkswagen. Who was this man? Ning Qin finally reacted from the shock. She thought of Qin Ran fighting last night and gritted her teeth. She felt as though Qin Ran was only fooling around in Yuncheng. She hadn't asked her about the fight last night and why she wasn't in school today. Not far away, a sapphire blue sports car came this way. Ning Qin immediately glanced back. She knew the sports car belonged to her sister. Law. Suddenly, she couldn't bother about Qin Ran anymore and even moved to the side. So as not to be seen. What are you doing here? Her sister. Law was well maintained. In her 30s, her hair was permed and put up with a jade hairpin. She wore a white cheongsam which outlined her good figure. Her eyebrows were delicate and meticulously carved. Her aura was extremely exquisite. Ning Qin was born prettier than her sister. Law, but at first glance, her aura was lacking. It's nothing. Ning Qin was relieved when she saw that she hadn't noticed Qin Ran. But her expression wasn't very good. If Qin Ran was like Qin Yu, she wouldn't even wait to show her off. Why would she need to hide her like that? Her sister. Law didn't ask much but hesitantly glanced at the car with the Volkswagen brand not far away. Her pretty eyebrows frowned slightly. The license plate was a little familiar. Red light. You will come here to take the side dishes in the future, Cheng Wan said, placing his hands on the steering wheel and casually tapping his fingers. Was that your relative? Yeah. Qin Ran put her hand on the window, emotionless. It doesn't look like it. Cheng Wan thought for a moment. The BMW she was driving is very valuable, and the Porsche behind her is also very nice. Qin Ran didn't say anything. She sat in the back seat and supported her chin to watch the stereo on the car. Your car looks good too. Qin Ran leaned back. Her long legs were slightly bent and she was playing a game. Her black fringe brushed over her brow bone and she raised her brow as she said. Green light. Cheng Wan started the car and said lightly, good. It's not as expensive as that Porsche, how could it be compared? Qin Ran. She looked up, staring at the Xingyu stereo on the car, silent. Xingyu was a music company. The quality of Xingyu's audio equipment was extremely fine and terrifyingly expensive. Generally, only those with abundant money would buy it. There was no coding for this set of speakers on Cheng Wan's car, so this should be a new product developed in house. She hadn't bought it and didn't know the specific price, but in this case, the minimum it was sold for was 8 million. Qin Ran did not cook often. But when she cooked, she was very clean. She wasn't as good as the top chefs, but she did have her own unique taste. Lu Xiaoying, who had not been expecting much, smiled while eating. After eating, Qin Ran was about to keep the plates. Cheng Wan looked up and glanced over Lu Xiaoying. His mood was good as he had just finished dinner, so he said concisely, go wash the dishes. Lu Xiaoying, who was drinking tea, was stunned. Me. Cheng Wan raised his eyebrows and rolled his eyes. Or should I do it? Wasn't this Qin Ran's role? In the end, Lu Xiaoying washed the bowls instead. Go back to the classroom. Cheng Wan glanced back from Qin Ran's hands that looked like an artist's. He squinted his eyes sleepily. Qin Ran didn't want to go back to the classroom. It was too noisy. But she said nothing. She just nodded, took out her coat and went out. There was a rest sign at the school doctor's room outside at noon. The door was closed, and the sun was over her head. No one was waiting outside the door. Qin Ran put her black peaked cap over her head. She was slender and her coat slackened loosely around her body. She lowered her head and her hair slid across the side of her brain. Her face under her hat was exquisite as she walked away slowly. 3. Her momentum was strong. A teenager in first middle school's jacket walked from the opposite direction. His eyebrows were defined and his temperament was cold. The girls on the road couldn't help but look over in his direction. Then, they quickly bowed their heads and whispered in a low voice with their cheeks blushed. It was Su Yaoguang. He passed by Qin Ran without even looking at her. They passed by. Qin Ran went to class 3.9. Su Yaoguang came to the principal's office. Come in. Principal Su pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose. His eyes fell on Su Yaoguang's face, his face slightly gentle. Sit. Grandpa, Su Yaoguang said very respectfully. Principal Su was the elder of the Su family. Su Yaoguang was not particularly clear about their affairs, but he also knew that his relatives were extremely afraid of Grandpa. Since childhood, they had worshipped each other very much. Principal Su glanced up and down at Su Yaoguang. This grandson had been excellent since he was a child. The Su family probably wanted him to inherit their business in the future, and he was also outstanding in Beijing. His family history and appearance were all outstanding. What do you think of your classmate, Qin Ran? Principal Su held a cup of tea and pondered. At the mention of her, Su Yaoguang frowned and didn't speak. Principal Su thought for a while and said, that child has a poor life. She saved me once, and I like her very much. You are the same age, so if you think it's okay, how about I ask her grandma to set a date for you too? Chapter 17. Not everyone can get 0. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios Principal Su looked at Su Yaoguang. He was wearing first middle school's uniform, but his face was bright and mature, and his legs were also long. His eyes were cold and clear, with pride between his eyebrows. His strength of character was obvious. This was the result of a long period of thought by President Su. In the Su family, only Su Yaoguang was outstanding. He wanted to find out Su Yaoguang's thoughts first. Su Yaoguang did not expect that President Su would talk to him about this. His raised eyebrows were startled. Grandpa, did you say she saved you? He had a lot of things about Qin Ran from Qiao Sheng and had also seen her fight with his own eyes. She also seemed very familiar with the high school group. He had also seen Qin Ran copying homework. Hence, he did not expect that Grandpa would pay such attention to the newly transferred student. He knew that Grandpa's vision was always high, so he couldn't understand this. Even if she had saved Grandpa, Grandpa didn't necessarily have to let her enter the Su family. Did she ask for it herself? Su Yaoguang lowered his eyes without saying a word. 2. I encountered some trouble when I went to Ninghai village to help the poor. As for the specific situation, President Su didn't say much. She rescued Grandpa, so our Su family is indeed indebted to her. We can also compensate her in other ways. The Qin family also has other outstanding people. Su Yaoguang deliberated, but his brows were still tightly knitted. Principal Su glanced at Su Yaoguang and motioned for him to continue. Qin Yu in class 3.1 is her sister. She is very good at chemistry. She has always been in the first 5 top positions. Su Yaoguang saw that Principal Su didn't really understand and continued explaining, she was the new student who performed during the first year. She plays the violin exceptionally well and even looks good. With that said, Qin Yu's face appeared in Principal Su's mind. He coughed and thought about it further. Now that he had some impressions, he slowly put down the cup in his hand and said, so it's her. His voice was faint. With Su Yaoguang's words, Principal Su knew that he was evading it. It was a pity that he didn't sleep well these days. However, he didn't want to force it. Principal Su held his glasses and said, it's okay. I didn't think it through properly. Go back to your class and think about it. Su Yaoguang went out and closed the door. He didn't see Principal Su hold his teacup in regret and entanglement after he left. Once he was out of the principal's room, Su Yaoguang's heart, which had been so hung up, finally relaxed. If Grandpa insisted on it, he would have no other choice. Back in the classroom, the paper they had written last night was being distributed. Since he wasn't there, Qiao Sheng was helping him distribute the physics paper. Su Yaoguang subconsciously looked in the direction of Qin Ran. She was holding Lin Siren's math book and copying her maths questions. Copying homework again. Su Yaoguang was expressionless. He sat back in his chair with his eyes down and his head lowered. He didn't look at Qin Ran again. He just took out his paper, picked up a pen and started to apply the formula he had talked to Qin Yu about last time. Lin Siren's paper was also distributed to her. The answer card was issued. Instead of reading her papers, she took out Qin Ran's papers and was immediately stunned. Qin Ran, how did you avoid all my correct answers? Everyone who copied homework often knew that it couldn't be the exact same. Especially when writing papers, they would have to change several answers. Last night, Lin Siren knew that Qin Ran had changed some answers, but she didn't expect that she had successfully avoided all the correct answers. With so many multiple-choice questions, there was not one that was correct. Was her luck this bad? Qin Ran didn't care about her papers. She crossed her legs rudely, put her cap on the window sill, and held her deskmate's maths book in her hand. She flipped through it casually, her eyelashes looking down. Upon hearing Lin Siren's voice, she tilted her head and took her paper. With her chin in one hand, she dragged out her voice. Could it be that I'm a genius? What? Qiao Sheng laughed out loud from behind. He laid on the table, poked Su Yaoguang's back with a pen, and laughed. Young Master Su, do you know, I saw that Qin Ran got 0 when I was distributing the papers. She still thinks she did well. It's not easy to get 0 when she has written the whole paper. Su Yaoguang was stunned. He couldn't get 0 even if he tried. But after thinking that the person was Qin Ran, Su Yaoguang just shook his head and thought he was crazy. He took out the papers to be used in the next class and no longer thought about Qin Ran. The first class in the afternoon was English. Li Erong walked around and saw Qin Ran leaning against the wall, her legs propped up rudely while she read her extra-curricular books. She frowned fiercely. But after thinking of this person's relationship to the principal, she held herself back and didn't say anything. At night. In the Lin family's house. When Qin Yu went back, she saw Lin Qi and Lin Wan sitting on the sofa in the main hall. Lin Wan was a gentle name, but she was full of aura and her eyebrows were sharp. With one stare, she could make people feel at a loss. Qin Yu called out very obediently, "Little aunt." "Oh, Qin Yu, you're so pretty now." To Qin Yu, Lin Wan's attitude was much kinder than to Ning Qing. Qin Yu obediently bowed her head. Little aunt had married to Beijing and only returned several times a year. 1 inch I'll go upstairs to sort out what my mother wants to use and take it to the hospital. Ning Qing sat uncomfortably and simply found a reason to go upstairs. In addition to reading a book in the evening, Qin Yu also practiced the violin for half an hour. She first accompanied Lin Wan and Lin Qi downstairs for a while before going up to the second floor. When she reached the second floor, Ning Qing had sorted her things out and was walking down with a bag. She didn't bother Qin Yu and went downstairs after a few words. Turning around, a piece of paper floated down the edge of the bag. The paper was a bit crumpled, and Qin Yu picked it up and opened it, glancing at it. She wanted to stop Ning Qing when she read the contents but suddenly froze. It seemed to be some sort of note, and the handwriting was graffiti-like. The writing on it was a bit scribbled and the lines were messy. Seeing the first line of content, Qin Yu's heart was agitated. It suddenly jumped and she clenched her hearts tightly. This was a violin notation. Chapter 18. Too much money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios. Ning Qing took a few steps and saw that Qin Yu seemed to be rooted on the spot. She clutched her bag, paused, and said slowly, "Yuer, what are you doing?" Qin Yu tightened the paper in her hand. "It's nothing." She pushed open the door into the piano room and sat on her stool. She picked up her score and played a few notes by herself, her eyes brightening. Even her heart felt tight. She looked uncertainly at the paper on the table. This was a sheet of music that she hadn't succeeded in playing for years. The writing on the sheet was wildly scribbled and rubbed on, and it looked like it had been discarded casually by someone. But who did this paper belong to? Qin Yu set the violin aside and leaned slightly on the back of the chair, her eyes hanging low. She had seen Qin Ran's writing before. The writing wasn't neat and it was also a little big. It couldn't be Qin Ran's. Furthermore, Qin Ran had said that she didn't play the violin anymore. Qin Yu didn't know what to think. She dazed off. That night, she was distracted while playing the violin. In the end, when she left, Qin Yu stood in front of the piece of paper for a while. She folded the paper, took it back to the room, and locked it in her own drawer. 1** downstairs. After Qin Yu went upstairs with Ning Qing, Lin Wan and Lin Qi were still talking. "I heard that this acted up again. She's bringing another child into the marriage." Lin Wan took a sip of tea and said with a light tone. Lin Qi smiled gently and elegantly. He held the gold-rimmed glasses on the bridge of his nose and said, "That will be Qin Ran. The little girl looks good." Lin Wan frowned. She had just returned to Yuncheng and only knew a little about Qin Ran's affairs. Lin Qi only said she was good-looking. "Don't hide it from me, I heard that her character isn't very good." Lin Wan put the teacup on the table. Her eyes were slightly stern and she sneered. She fought and was expelled from school, so she took a year off. Now, she wants you to help her clean up her mess. My sister Lo really hasn't grown in these years. She's so small-minded with her children. Lin Qi was born noble and Lin Wan had also married into a prestigious family. Even though it was her second marriage, Lin Wan still looked down on Ning Qing. "Then you have misunderstood me. I really want to help." Lin Qi shook his head and smiled mildly. "But the little girl has her own good fortune. She had a letter of recommendation, so she entered first middle school. She doesn't live at home either, and packed up her bags and left on the second day." Lin Wan pursed her lips. Ning Qing's mood just loosened up at the corner of the stairs when Lin Wan spoke again. She said in a meaningful voice, "Her tactic is." "Sister," Lin Qi said. Lin Wan shook her head. "I'm reminding you that dogs that bite don't bark. Can't you tell your attitude to Jin Xian has already softened? The business world was despicable." Lin Qi hadn't thought about it before, but at this time, he had to admit it. Lin Wan asked Aunt Zhang to refill her glass of water. She took a sip and said gracefully, "I only acknowledge Yuer as my niece in this family. I know you like Yuer." Lin Qi smoked a cigarette and lit it himself. The Lin family really liked Qin Yu. The love of this family had always been mixed with benefits. Although Qin Yu was a stepdaughter, she had given pride to her parents. Speaking of Qin Yu, Lin Wan's complexion was slightly more relaxed. "After a while, I will take Yuer on a trip to the capital. My husband likes the violin, and he has talked about it to Qin Yu several times. Oh, and also, teacher Wei Lin wants to find an apprentice. I'll bring Yuer there to visit next time." Lin Qi was stunned before he finally smiled. Yuer is blessed to have one old master's favor. Around the corner, Ning Qing stopped for a long while before coming downstairs. When she went downstairs, Lin Wan had a dignified sip of her tea without saying a word. Ning Qin went directly to the hospital to deliver the things. Chen Shulan lived in a separate ward with a nurse. Aunt and uncle all wanted to come and visit you. Ning Wei is also here in Yuncheng. Chen Shulan's thoughts wandered along the way and her mood wasn't very good. She pursed her lips. I booked a hotel. You can come by the day after tomorrow. A few days ago when Chen Shulan was sick, none of those relatives even asked about her. After knowing that she was in Yuncheng right now, they were all calling her one by one. Ning Qin was too impatient to deal with these relatives, but she was also afraid that they would go to the Lin family's villa to find her. If they did that, she would lose face in front of Lin Wan again. Qin Ran's payday. Making 2 meals a day was very simple, and she didn't even need to wash the bowls. On her payday, the 2 meals added to less than an hour and she received 200 a day. In the evening, she went out to eat after cooking. At this moment, she was eating noodles in a stall outside the school. Her eyebrows were delicate as she ate slowly and absent-mindedly. Several teenagers shoved and pushed to squeeze into this stall to eat. Not far away, in a Volkswagen car, Lu Xiaoying said slightly, "Wait, she's only eating this." A bowl of plain noodles with a few green vegetables floating in it. It was bland and tasteless. He saw that the teenagers beside all ordered beef noodles. Lu Xiaoying put his hands on the steering wheel. Didn't I just give her money today? Is she on a diet? Cheng Wan looked through the window at Qin Ran. His legs were slightly draped and he was wearing casual pants. Get down. Lu Xiaoying. Ha. I'm hungry, buy me beef, Cheng Wan said casually. Lu Xiaoying. Did he feed the dogs the meal that Qin Ran just made? He rubbed his nose and got out of the car to buy a pile of beef for him. He also greeted Qin Ran very coincidentally. Before leaving, he also carefully gave half a plate for her. The black Volkswagen slowly drove away. Inside the car, Lu Xiaoying watched as Qin Ran pinched a piece of beef and ate while leaning against the backrest. Her fingertips were slender and long. She's not on a diet. Lu Xiaoying was stunned again. Cheng Wan didn't speak. He just tilted his head slightly and his eyes cleared. Let's go, Butler Cheng must be anxious for us. They arrived at the villa. Lu Xiaoying stopped the car and put a cigarette in his mouth. Then, the cell phone in his pocket rang. He picked it up and saw that it was a text message. Ah, Lu Xiaoying said in surprise as he watched Cheng Wan get out of bed slowly. Our order last night has been returned. 3*** First Middle School. Qin Ran supported her chin and was playing a game when several messages popped up. She swiped it away blankly. After a game, she exited. She stood up against the table, bent over and took the headphones inside the table. She buttoned her cap and went to the bathroom. She went inside the last cubicle. She put on the headphones, turned on the voice changer, lowered her voice, and said in a cold and dry voice, "Which idiot ordered 5 times the original price? Does he have too much money?" Chapter 19. Hidden number. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Qin Ran was sitting on the toilet lid with her fingers around the black headphone cord. The cubicle door was closed. There was the sound of messy footsteps outside the door. Suddenly, a girl in a school uniform opened the door. She was shocked. She didn't expect a person to be sitting on the toilet lid. Her gaze was unrestrained, her expression icily arrogant, and she had her lips curled up heedlessly. Under the dim light from the small window in the cubicle, her face looked extremely delicate. When she saw the door open, she raised an eyebrow at her, ostentatious and sharp. I'm sorry. The girl's face was a little red. She closed the door and opened another cubicle. 1. The expression on Qin Ran's face didn't change. She had set a price 10 times higher than the market price because she didn't want to accept any order. Never mind that someone had tried to order from her before, but now, some idiot even offered 5 times her price. She cursed and continued talking in a rush. Even if there were other students in the bathroom, she didn't know what holding back was. The impatience in her voice could be heard through the voice changer. The person on the other side didn't dare to say a word. She hung up the phone directly. Qin Ran put the phone back in her pocket, the headphones still hanging on her ears. The black headphone cord dangled from the side of her face, making her face appear whiter. She washed her hands slowly and went out. For self-study in the evening, she went with Lin Siren. Xiao Sheng was just a few steps away, and he even occasionally called Qin Ran and Lin Siren. Su Yaoguang walked beside him holding 2 books, looking down the corridor with an indifferent expression. Su Yaoguang is too cold. He ignores everyone except Xiao Sheng and Qin Yu. Lin Siren gossiped with Qin Ran. Qin Ran took off her earphones slowly without speaking. Now that self-study was dismissed, there were a lot of people walking outside. Qin Ran had managed to avoid the peak period, so everyone was rushing to leave and there weren't many people in the corridor now. Qin Yu held a book and waited at the entrance of the stairs. Qin Ran and Lin Siren passed by her. She lowered her voice and said in a volume only the 2 of them could hear, "Go to NU Grand Hotel tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Mother's relatives are coming." She didn't make any extra movements but had a feeling of supremacy in her voice. Qin Ran put one hand in her pocket and narrowed her eyes slightly. She didn't slow down. Qin Yu saw that her expression hadn't changed much and was even a little cold, so she continued to say, "Aunt will go tomorrow too." At this moment, Qin Ran reacted. She stuck her hand in her pocket and turned to look at her slightly. She said, "Okay," lightly. The 2 talked for less than 3 seconds and passed by each other. Even Lin Siren didn't hear the conversation between the 2. "Let's go." Lin Siren heard Qin Yu say to Su Yaoguang with a smile. Su Yaoguang also rarely opened his mouth. "Qin Yu is really a winner in life," Lin Siren said emotionally. She whispered to Qin Ran, "Her family members are all geniuses. Her parents and brother adore her, and every year, her birthday is a big deal. In school, Su Yaoguang is also protecting her. That's why I told you not to mess with her." Qin Ran raised her eyebrows at her but said nothing. Behind them, Qin Yu was speaking to Su Yaoguang. Most girls in the school were jealous that she could talk to Su Yaoguang. While Su Yaoguang was talking to her, she subconsciously glanced at Qin Ran. Qin Ran did not turn back. Su Yaoguang held his book in another hand and asked casually, "Have you got any new songs recently?" Qin Yu tilted her head and was a little shocked. Then, she pursed her lips and subconsciously remembered the post. It note. She turned away. "Why?" "Nothing, I'm just asking." Su Yaoguang paused. "There is a new one, how did you know?" Qin Yu smiled. 3. Su Yaoguang stopped for 2 seconds and his eyes relaxed. "The next time you practice the violin, I'll go there to watch." 2 *** in the evening the next day. Qin Ran came out of the school medical room and went to a small road by the school gate to wait for the car. At noon, Ning Qing had called and said that Lin Jinxian would pick them up on the way. In the evening, the weather wasn't very hot. Qin Ran looked at the quivering tree on the opposite side. She picked up her phone and looked at the time. It was 10 minutes to 6. A black car approached the school gate on the left. It was a bit slow. The car passed by her. At the end of the road, it returned. The window of the driver's seat was lowered and a very handsome face appeared. He touched his ear studs and said, "You." Qin Ran, "What are you doing here?" Lu Xiaoying was the type that talked a lot and was flirtatious. He was friendly to everyone and thought that he was close to Qin Ran. Qin Ran was very impatiently holding her mobile phone. She pressed her finger against her lips and raised her eyebrows. The air pressure around her was low and her face was unpleasant. She was especially cold today. She glanced in the direction of the school road and said nothing. If it had been someone else, Master Lu would have lost his temper. But this was Qin Ran, who was crazy and proud usually. She was ridiculously good-looking too, so Lu Xiaoying didn't lose his temper. Lu Xiaoying still wanted to say something. But the window at the back seat opened. Cheng Wan leaned halfway on the car door and glanced over, looking like an exquisite painting. He said with a chuckle, "Where are you going?" "You." "Oh." Cheng Wan nodded. "It's on the way, we'll drop you off." Lu Xiaoying almost bit his tongue. "On the way." Qin Ran lowered her head. She gathered up her school uniform jacket and got into the car. He moved aside, his long eyelashes drooped. Cheng Wan's car was clean and didn't have perfume. He didn't like perfume. But at that time, he smelled a light, sweet smell. For Cheng Wan leaned quietly against the door. NU wasn't far from the school and would take about 20 minutes by car. Lu Xiaoying's cell phone rang. He couldn't find the Bluetooth headset, so he threw the phone behind. "Master Wan, take it." Cheng Wan leaned against the door and looked at the call slowly. His figure was long and slender, and his long legs had nowhere to rest. He sat in the back seat and looked a little huddled up as his beautiful fingers pressed the phone. Qin Ran didn't want to eavesdrop on the phone call. It was just that his words were a little familiar. She heard him say in an unhurried and overbearing voice, "Since 5 times isn't enough, make it 50 times. Qin Ran frowned. He hung up. The car stopped and arrived. Qin Ran thanked them and got off. Lu Xiaoying was about to start the car again when in the closed space, the phone rang again. "Not 50 times, make it 100 times. Lu Xiaoying." "Master Wan, that's not my cell phone." Cheng Wan tilted his head. On the seat beside him was a white mobile phone that didn't belong to them. It had a caller ID on it, which was a hidden number. Chapter 20. 580,000 Violin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Cheng Wan looked down and paused a little. He had been contacting these undisclosed numbers recently. Outside the car, Qin Ran realized that her mobile phone had fallen. She turned around and walked back, leaned slightly, bent her fingers, and knocked casually on the window. Raising his eyebrows, Cheng Wan reached out and lowered the window. She lowered her eyes half-heartedly and indifferently and was quite apologetic. "I dropped my phone." Cheng Wan looked down, picked up the phone, and handed it to her. His fingers were long and beautiful, and his voice was dull. "I know, your phone is ringing." Qin Ran took the phone, her expression still the same, and said casually, "It's for promotion." Ever since the software for undisclosed numbers was developed, there were indeed many undisclosed numbers now. Entering the hotel, Qin Ran lowered her head and sent a message to Ning Qing. The undisclosed number called again. She walked to the end of the corridor without changing her expression, took out the earphones in her pocket, turned on the microphone, and connected the phone. The other party raised the amount 50 times. The voice was obviously processed, and there was a slight current. "Do you want to come out of seclusion?" Qin Ran. She leaned against the wall and didn't speak for a while. After a long while, Qin Ran said, "Who is that idiot?" "Ha!" The person on the other end of the phone was shocked. "I asked, which fool ordered me? Give me his details." Qin Ran smirked and coiled the earphone cable around her fingertips. Hearing Qin Ran's relaxed attitude, the person on the phone hung up happily. It didn't take long for the specific details to be sent to Qin Ran's mailbox. Not walking away, Qin Ran changed her posture, leaned back against the wall, and opened the data unhurriedly. As she looked at the messages, her veins jumped again. She texted back one word, okay. Simple and crisp. Hearing that Lin Jinxian was about to arrive, Ning Qin waited downstairs for a long time. In the evening, the Lin family's driver had picked her up and didn't have time to go pick up Qin Yu. Since Lin Jinxian was passing by, he helped to pick up Qin Yu and Qin Ran. Ning Qin was somewhat flattered. Lin Jinxian had always been cold to her all these years, but once Qin Yu was involved, he was much better to get along with. Since her stepson was fetching her daughter, she naturally had to wait downstairs. Jinxian, we really troubled you. Ning Qin smiled slightly. Carrying a bag, she had a calm elegance on her beautiful face. Getting out of the car, Lin Jinxuan's eyes were very light and he was very handsome and gentle. It's nothing. Lin Jinxian was very busy lately, and even at home, he was always on the phone. He looked extremely worried as if something had happened, so Ning Qin and Lin Qi didn't bother him much. Now that he was here, Lin Jinxian also didn't talk much. He was very polite and greeted Ning Qin the moment he got off the car. Ning Qin watched Qin Yu get down from the car. The door in the back seat never opened. Right now, Lin Jinxian was about to drive away. She glanced at the back seat. Jinxian, where is Qin Ran? Didn't she come along? Lin Jinxian already had his hands on the key. Hearing this sentence, he was silent for several seconds before raising his head, pressing his temples and saying in a stunned voice, sorry, I was too busy and forgot about her. Do you know her phone number? I'll go pick her up now. It turned out she had been forgotten. Ning Qin nodded. Her fingers moved, but her tone was mild and gentle. It's all right, I'll let her take a taxi by herself. You're so busy recently, you don't need to pick her up. Lin Jinxian was indeed not such a gentleman, and he was also very busy. Give me her phone number later and I'll apologize to her. Once Lin Jinxian left, Ning Qin pressed her temples and pulled out her cell phone to call Qin Ran. She didn't pick up. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't think of it. Qin Yu walked into the venue and handed her violin to Aunt Zhang apologetically. Ning Qin hung up a little impatiently since Qin Ran wasn't answering. It's okay. It has nothing to do with you. She called twice in a row again, but Qin Ran still didn't answer. At first, she was angry, but when she thought of the process, she felt a little uncomfortable. If it had been Qin Yu, Lin Jinxian would definitely have gone back to pick her up. Even if she didn't have time, Ning Qin would have gone to pick her up personally and wouldn't have just glossed over it. In the end, it was because she was Qin Ran, not Qin Yu. She hadn't gotten along with Qin Ran for 12 years now and had already drifted away. Especially since Qin Ran had a stiff temper and was so cold and proud. She was so hard and didn't say nice stuff like Qin Yu did. So many relatives had come to Yuncheng just to see how well Ning Qin was doing. They weren't actually there to see Chen Shulan, they just wanted to better their relationships with Ning Qin. Ning Qin knew what the relatives were thinking. She looked down on them but didn't want to disgrace herself either. On such an occasion, Qin Ran could be absent, but Qin Yu couldn't. Qin Yu was the reason for her proud existence. As for Qin Ran, there were no secrets between this group of relatives. If they asked about why Qin Ran was still in her senior year, Ning Qin sighed. She shoved her phone back into her pocket and took Qin Yu up the stairs. After a while, the group of relatives was almost all there. Chen Shulan bowed her head and watched as Ning Qin was surrounded by everyone. She then asked, "Where's Ran Ran, why isn't she here?" Ning Qin paused. Out of the corner of her eyes, she happened to see a thin figure coming in. The person was loosely dressed in a first middle school's uniform jacket and wore a white T-shirt inside. The private room was dark and noisy. Everyone was extravagant, and she was the only one frowning. "Isn't she here?" Ning Qing said. Chen Shulan saw her too. Qin Ran was dazzling wherever she went. Her raised eyebrows were sharp and straight, and everyone noticed her presence when she entered the room. "Grandma, where's Aunt?" Qin Ran took Chen Shulan's left hand and asked. She looked around the room and finally saw Ning Wei standing at a corner helplessly. "Big niece, really, I haven't seen you for many years. You are getting younger and younger." A middle-aged woman held Ning Qing's hand affectionately. "Oh, this must be Qin Yu. She is so pretty. I heard that she even played the violin on TV. How proud you must be." Qin Ran heard Ning Qing's reserved and joyful voice. "Come, Yuer, this is my brother's wife. She doesn't need me to worry about her since young. Now, she's in first middle school's first class." Qin Ran had never seen these relatives before and basically didn't know them. She also knew that these relatives had come for Ning Qing and Qin Yu, so she was too lazy and indifferent to interact with them as well. Excusing herself to Chen Shulan, she went to find Ning Wei. Ning Wei stood in a corner pinching the corner of her clothes helplessly. Her clothes were clean but obviously old. Ran. Her eyes lit up at the sight of Qin Ran, and her voice raised slightly. Qin Ran paused for a while. She then held her cell phone and inhaled. "Aunt, why aren't you sitting down? There are no stools. I can just stand." Ning Wei laughed, then stared at the equally restrained girl beside her. "Muing, this is your cousin, Ran." One before Muing spoke, she saw Qin Ran move. Qin Ran didn't say anything and just glanced around. Her gaze was unspeakable cold. Cold and dry. There was a stool not far away with a violin placed on it. She seemed to sigh with an irritable and very angry expression on her face, then squeezed her fingers and walked over. Before her slender fingers touched the violin, a sharp voice exploded beside her. "This violin is worth 580,000. Miss Qin, don't touch it."